She walked into the elite sniper training facility with quiet confidence, her gear bag slung over one shoulder, eyes scanning the room with the practiced awareness of someone who had seen real combat. The other candidates, all men, barely glanced her way. To them, she was just another recruit trying to prove herself. But when Sergeant Miller saw her approach his station, his lip curled into a smirk that would soon be wiped away forever. What happened next would become legend in military circles, and the shot she was about to make would redefine everything they thought they knew about precision, skill, and the deadly art of long-range warfare. Welcome to those who left a trace. Before we continue with this incredible story, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who serve with distinction. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Sierra Mountains training facility as 23 candidates gathered for the most elite sniper course in the United States military. This wasn't basic marksmanship. This was where the best shooters from every branch came to become legends. The acceptance rate was 12%. The washout rate was brutal. And the standards were set so high that most candidates left questioning everything they thought they knew about precision shooting. Among the sea of buzz cuts, tactical gear, and testosterone-fueled bravado stood Zoe Williams. 29 years old, 5'6", with auburn hair pulled back in a regulation bun and green eyes that missed nothing. She wore the same digital camouflage uniform as everyone else, carried the same basic equipment, and had passed the same preliminary tests. But there was something different about her presence, a stillness that spoke of someone who had learned to be comfortable in uncomfortable places. The other candidates barely noticed her. Sergeant First Class Marcus Miller definitely noticed her, and what he saw filled him with the kind of irritation that had been building in his chest for months. Another diversity quota, he thought. Another political statement, disguised as military readiness. Another woman who thought she could do a man's job in a man's world. Miller had been an Army sniper for 15 years. 3 tours in Iraq, 2 in Syria, more confirmed kills than he liked to count, and a chest full of medals that prove his worth in ways that transcended politics. He had earned his position as lead instructor through blood, sweat, and bullets. He didn't have patience for experiments in social engineering. Listen up, candidates. Miller's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. Welcome to advanced precision marksmanship. For the next 6 weeks, this facility will be your world. These mountains will test every skill you think you have and expose every weakness you've been hiding. Most of you will fail. Some of you will quit. A few of you might actually become snipers. His eyes swept across the group, lingering on Zoe with obvious disdain. This course has a proud tradition of producing the deadliest marksmen in military history. Notice I said marksman. This isn't a place where we lower standards to accommodate anyone's feelings or political agendas. If you can't keep up, there's no shame in recognizing your limitations and finding somewhere more suitable. The message was clear, and every candidate understood exactly who it was directed toward. Several of them glanced at Zoe, wondering if she would respond or simply pack up and leave. She did neither. She stood perfectly still, her expression unchanged, absorbing Miller's words without visible reaction. But Zoe Williams had heard worse, much worse, and from men who were far more dangerous than Sergeant Miller could imagine. What none of them knew was that Zoe Williams had a story that would make their training exercises look like summer camp. 8 years earlier, fresh out of high school and desperate to escape a dead-end town in Montana, she had enlisted in the Army with dreams of seeing the world and serving her country. What she found instead was a calling that would define the rest of her life. Her first deployment to Iraq had been a baptism by fire. Assigned to a forward operating base near Fallujah, she had distinguished herself not just as a soldier, but as someone with an almost supernatural ability to read terrain, weather conditions, and human behavior at distances that defied comprehension. Her commanders quickly recognized her potential and fast-tracked her into sniper training. By her second deployment, Zoe was operating as part of an elite reconnaissance team. conducting Overwatch missions that kept American forces alive in some of the most dangerous territory on Earth. Her longest confirmed kill came during the Battle of Talafar, a shot that traveled 3,100 meters through shifting desert winds to neutralize a high-value target who was directing mortar fire at American positions. But it wasn't just the distance that made the shot legendary among those who knew about it. It was the conditions. Sandstorm approaching, wind gusting unpredictably, target moving between cover positions, and friendly forces in the danger zone below. Zoe had calculated windage, elevation, target movement, and atmospheric pressure in her head while lying prone on a rooftop under enemy fire. One shot, one kill, 52 American lives saved. That shot had earned her the Distinguished Service Cross, though the citation remained classified to protect operational security. It had also earned her a reputation among Special Operations Forces as someone you wanted on Overwatch when things got serious. Her third deployment to Syria had cemented that reputation. Working with Joint Special Operations Forces, she had provided precision fire support for missions that officially never happened. Hostage rescues, high-value target eliminations, intelligence gathering operations, all conducted in the shadows, all dependent on her ability to deliver lethal precision at ranges most snipers couldn't even see. But combat had taken its toll. 4 separate wounds, including shrapnel from an IED that had left scars across her right shoulder and a slight limp in her left leg. Nightmares that made sleep a luxury. And a growing realization that the skills she had developed in war needed to be passed on to the next generation of warriors, SO, when opportunity arose to attend the Advanced Precision Marksmanship course. Not as a student, but as an evaluation candidate for potential instructor positions, Zoe had volunteered. Her military file had been heavily redacted for security reasons, showing only basic information about her service record. To Sergeant Miller and the other instructors, she appeared to be just another soldier looking to add sniper qualification to her resume. They had no idea they were looking at one of the most lethal precision shooters in military history. The first week of training was designed to break candidates mentally and physically. 18-hour days, impossible standards, constant criticism, and exercises designed to expose every flaw in technique, judgment, and character. Miller made no secret of his belief that Zoe didn't belong there, and he took every opportunity to make his point. "Williams," he shouted during the third day of training, "what's your windage calculation for an 800-meter target in 15-knot crosswind?" Zoe looked up from the spotting scope she had been adjusting. "For minutes left, Sergeant." "Wrong. Any real sniper would know that's a 6-minute hold. Maybe you should stick to targets you can actually see." The other candidates snickered, but Zoe said nothing. She had made similar calculations hundreds of times in combat, and she knew her answer was correct. Miller was either testing her resolve or demonstrating his own limitations. Either way, she would let her shooting speak for itself. The range work began with basic marksmanship at known distances. 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters. Shooting that any qualified marksman should be able to handle easily. Miller watched through binoculars as each candidate engaged their targets, calling out corrections and criticisms with the authority of someone who had never doubted his own expertise. When Zoe's turn came, she approached the firing line with the same calm confidence she had shown all week. She settled into position behind the rifle, a standard M24 sniper weapon system, and began her pre-shot routine. Range estimation, wind reading, atmospheric considerations, target analysis. The same mental checklist she had used in combat when missing men Americans died. "Take your time, Williams," Miller called out sarcastically. "It's only a 300-meter target. Nothing too challenging for someone of your experience." Zoe ignored the commentary. She had learned long ago that the only response to doubt was performance. She settled her breathing, found her natural point of aim, and squeezed the trigger with the kind of control that comes only from years of practice under life and death pressure. The bullet struck the target dead center, exactly where she had intended it to go. "Lucky shot," Miller muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. He had seen thousands of shooters over the years, and he recognized precision when he saw it. Still, one shot didn't prove anything. The distances increased throughout the week. 500 meters, 800 meters, 1,000 meters. Each evolution designed to push candidates beyond their comfort zones and expose the limitations that would disqualify them from sniper training. But Zoe's performance remained consistently excellent, not perfect. She missed occasionally, like everyone else, but her misses were small, her hits were centered, and her technique was flawless. Miller found himself watching her more closely, looking for flaws that would justify his initial assessment. Her breathing was controlled. Her position was textbook. Her follow-through was consistent. Most frustrating of all, she seemed completely unaffected by his attempts to rattle her concentration. "Williams," he said during a break in training, "where did you learn to shoot?" "My father taught me, Sergeant. We hunted together when I was growing up. Hunting rabbits isn't the same as precision marksmanship under pressure." "No, Sergeant, it's not." Miller waited for her to elaborate, but she offered nothing more. Her brief responses and refusal to be drawn into defensive explanations only increased his irritation. He was accustomed to candidates who either crumbled under pressure or fought back with bravado. Zoe's calm competence fell into neither category, and he wasn't sure how to handle it. By the end of the first week, 3 candidates had been eliminated for poor performance. 2 had quit voluntarily, and the remaining 18 were beginning to understand the true demands of sniper training. But Zoe remained near the top of every ranking, her consistency and precision impossible to ignore. The second week brought advanced challenges. Moving targets, unknown distances, environmental complications designed to simulate combat conditions. This was where most candidates began to struggle, where the difference between range shooting and tactical marksmanship became apparent. Miller had designed a particularly challenging evolution for the Monday morning session. Targets at unknown distances between 600 and 1,200 meters, with varying wind conditions created by the natural terrain features of the mountain valley. Each candidate would have 5 minutes to engage 3 targets, with no coaching or assistance from instructors. "This is where we separate the pretenders from the real deal," Miller announced to the group. "Range estimation, wind reading, and precision shooting under time pressure. Miss more than 1 target and you're gone. Questions?" There were no questions. The candidates understood the stakes. One by one, they took their positions behind the rifle. Some performed well, hitting 2 out of 3 targets. Others struggled with range estimation or wind reading, their shots impacting wide or high or low. A few managed clean runs. All 3 targets engaged successfully. When Zoe's turn came, Miller made no effort to hide his skepticism. "Let's see what you can do when Daddy's not there to help you spot the wind," he said loud enough for the other candidates to hear. Zoe approached the firing line and began her analysis. 3 targets, different distances, wind flags positioned throughout the valley showing varying conditions. She had 5 minutes to make range estimates, calculate firing solutions, and deliver precise shots. Under Miller's watchful eye and the pressure of elimination, this was her moment to prove herself. She settled into position and began her work. First target, approximately 750 meters, wind pushing left to right at about 12 knots. She adjusted her scope, controlled her breathing, and fired. Through the spotting scope, she could see the hit marker indicating a successful engagement. Second target, longer range, maybe 950 meters, with swirling wind conditions created by a ridgeline. This was more complex, requiring her to read multiple wind indicators and make adjustments for the bullet's longer flight time. She took her time, made her calculations, and fired again. Another hit. Third target, the longest of the 3, positioned at what appeared to be just over 1,100 meters. The wind was steady but strong, and the target was partially obscured by vegetation. Zoe spent nearly 2 minutes analyzing conditions, checking and rechecking her calculations. This was the kind of shot that separated good shooters from great ones. She fired. The spotter confirmed the hit, and several candidates actually applauded. Zoe had engaged all 3 targets successfully, and her shot placement had been excellent on each one. Even Miller couldn't find fault with the performance, though he tried. Adequate, he said grudgingly. But this was just practice. Real targets shoot back. The comment hung in the air like a challenge. For a moment, something flickered in Zoe's eyes, not anger, but a kind of recognition that Miller had just crossed a line he might regret crossing. But she said nothing, just cleaned her rifle and prepared for the next evolution. That evening, one of the other candidates approached her during dinner. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had been watching Zoe throughout the training, and her consistent performance had earned his respect. "Where did you really learn to shoot like that?" he asked quietly. Zoe looked up from her meal. "What do you mean?" I've been in the Army for 12 years, and I've never seen a shooter like you. The way you read wind, the way you calculate range, the way you stay calm under pressure, that's not hunting experience. That's combat experience." Zoe was quiet for a moment, considering how much to reveal. "I've been deployed," she said finally. "Where?" "Iraq. Syria." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "Combat deployments. That explains a lot. How many tours?" 3 total. 2 in Iraq, 1 in Syria." "Jesus. And you're here for sniper training? Shouldn't you be teaching this course instead of taking it?" Before Zoe could answer, Miller's voice cut across the dining hall. "Rodriguez. Williams. Less talking, more eating. You got a 0500 start tomorrow, and I guarantee it's going to be harder than anything you've seen so far." The conversation ended, but Rodriguez's questions lingered in Zoe's mind. She was walking a fine line between maintaining her cover and performing well enough to succeed in the course. Too much success would raise questions she wasn't prepared to answer. Too little would mean failing to achieve her mission objectives. But as the training progressed and Miller's hostility became more pronounced, Zoe began to realize that subtlety might not be an option. Week 3 brought the course's signature challenge, the unknown distance precision shot. Each candidate would be given one attempt to engage a target at a distance they had to estimate themselves, with conditions they had to read independently, using skills they had developed over the previous 2 weeks. Miller had positioned the target at 1,847 meters, a distance that pushed the effective range of the M24 system and required expert-level skills in range estimation, wind reading, and precision shooting. It was a kind of shot that most military snipers would never attempt in combat, reserved for only the most exceptional marksmen under ideal conditions. "This is your final examination in precision marksmanship," Miller announced to the remaining 14 candidates. "One shot, unknown distance, no coaching, no second chances. Hit the target, and you move forward in the program. Miss it, and you're gone. The distance is somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 meters. Everything else is up to you to figure out." The pressure was enormous. This single shot would determine whether weeks of training had been worthwhile or wasted. Some candidates would return to their units as failures, their confidence shattered by an impossible standard. Others would earn the right to continue toward becoming certified military snipers. One by one, candidates took their positions and attempted the shot. Some came close, their bullets impacting within a few inches of the target. Others missed by feet, their range estimation, or wind, reading proving inadequate for the extreme distance. After 12 attempts, no one had achieved a direct hit. Miller was clearly pleased with the results. "This is what separates snipers from regular marksmen," he told the group. "The ability to make impossible shots under pressure. Most of you aren't ready for this level of precision. There's no shame in that. Not everyone can be elite." When Zoe's turn came, Miller's commentary became particularly pointed. "Williams, you've had a good run, but this is where reality sets in. This isn't a hunting trip with Daddy. This is precision shooting at the limits of human capability. Take your time, do your best, and try not to embarrass yourself too badly. Zoe approached the firing line with the same calm confidence she had shown throughout the course. But internally, she was making calculations that went far beyond what the training had covered. She was drawing on experience earned in combat, knowledge gained through hundreds of similar shots under conditions where missing meant friendly forces died. She settled into position and began her analysis. The target was small, barely visible even through the high-powered scope. Range estimation at this distance required reading multiple terrain features and atmospheric conditions. Wind reading required analyzing vegetation movement at several points between her position and the target. But Zoe had made similar shots before, in combat, under fire, with lives hanging in the balance. She spent nearly 10 minutes analyzing conditions, making calculations that incorporated factors most of the other candidates had never heard of: Coriolis effect, atmospheric density, barrel temperature, even the slight difference in elevation between her position and the target. When she finally settled behind a rifle, her breathing was controlled, her position was perfect, and her mind was clear. This wasn't just a training shot anymore. This was her chance to show Miller and everyone else exactly who they had been underestimating for 3 weeks. She fired. The shot seemed to hang in the air forever, the bullet's flight time stretching across nearly 3 seconds before impact. Through the spotting scope, Miller watched in disbelief as the projectile struck the target dead center, exactly where Zoe had aimed it. The range fell silent. Even Miller seemed stunned by what he had just witnessed. A perfect shot at a distance that pushed the limits of the weapon system, under conditions that had defeated every other candidate. "Holy shit," someone whispered, breaking the silence. Zoe saved her weapon, stood up, and looked directly at Miller for the first time since the course began. "Adequate, Sergeant?" Miller stared at her for a long moment, his mind struggling to process what he had just seen. That shot wasn't luck. That shot wasn't beginner's fortune. That shot was a product of experience and skill that went far beyond anything her service record indicated. "Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that?" he demanded. Zoe's expression didn't change. "My father taught me well, Sergeant." But Miller wasn't buying it anymore. No amount of hunting experience could account for the precision and confidence she had just demonstrated. He had seen that kind of shooting exactly twice in his career, both times from snipers with extensive combat experience and classified operations on their records. "Williams, report to my office after evening chow. We need to talk." Miller's office was spartanly decorated with the usual military memorabilia: unit citations, photographs from various deployments, and a collection of challenge coins that told the story of a distinguished career. When Zoe entered, Miller was sitting behind his desk, studying a file that she immediately recognized as her service record. "Sit down, Williams. We have some things to discuss." Zoe took the offered chair, but remained alert. This conversation had been inevitable since her shot that afternoon, and she had been preparing for it mentally. "I've been looking at your file," Miller began, "and it's interesting what's not in here. Basic training, advanced individual training, a few routine assignments. But for someone with your obvious shooting skills, there's a distinct lack of specialized training or combat decorations." Zoe said nothing, waiting to see how much Miller had figured out. "Now, I've been doing this job for a long time, and I've seen a lot of shooters. Some are naturally gifted. Some work harder than others, but the kind of precision you demonstrated today doesn't come from hunting trips in Montana. That was military-grade marksmanship at a level that takes years of training and experience to develop." Miller leaned forward, his eyes locked on Zoe's face. "So, I'm going to ask you again, where did you really learn to shoot?" Zoe considered her options. She could maintain her cover story, but Miller was clearly suspicious and had the resources to dig deeper into her background. She could tell him the truth, but that would compromise the evaluation mission she had been sent to conduct. Or she could find a middle ground that satisfied his curiosity without revealing classified information. I've had some additional training beyond what's in my file, she said carefully. What kind of additional training? The kind that doesn't appear in unclassified records. Miller's eyes narrowed. You're telling me you have classified training in your background? Training that's been scrubbed from your official file. I'm telling you that some experiences don't make it into standard personnel records, Sergeant, especially when they involve operations that officially never happened. The room fell silent as Miller processed this information. If Zoe was telling the truth, if she had been involved in classified operations that had been removed from her record, then everything about her presence at the course took on a different meaning. Who sent you here, Williams? The same people who sent everyone else. I'm here to complete sniper training and earn my certification. Bullshit. Nobody with your skills needs basic sniper training. You're here for a different reason. Zoe met his gaze steadily. What reason would that be, Sergeant? I think you're here to evaluate this program. I think someone higher up the chain wants to know how we're performing, and they sent you to find out. The question is, what are you going to tell them? It was a perceptive guess, closer to the truth than Zoe had expected. Miller might be prejudiced and abrasive, but he wasn't stupid. He had recognized that her presence didn't fit the normal patterns, and he was drawing logical conclusions from available evidence. What would you like me to tell them? Zoe asked. Miller leaned back in his chair, considering the implications of what he had discovered. If Zoe was indeed an evaluation asset, then his treatment of her over the past 3 weeks could have serious consequences for his career. But if she was just another candidate with an unusual background, then he had potentially compromised operational security by pursuing the matter. I want you to tell them that this course maintains the highest standards in military sniper training, he said finally. That we don't lower our expectations for anyone, regardless of political pressure or social engineering experiments. And if I told them that those standards are being applied unevenly, that qualified candidates are being subjected to unnecessary harassment based on personal prejudices rather than performance metrics. Miller's face flushed red. That's insubordination, Williams. No, Sergeant. That's an honest assessment based on 3 weeks of observation. You've been testing me differently than the other candidates since day one. Higher standards, more criticism, less support. If this were a real evaluation, that behavior would be noted and reported. The confrontation hung in the air between them. Miller realized that he had potentially walked into a trap of his own making. His treatment of Zoe, which he had justified as maintaining standards, could be interpreted as discriminatory behavior that undermined the program's credibility. What do you want from me? He asked finally. I want you to treat all candidates equally, based on their performance rather than your assumptions. And I want you to remember that the enemy doesn't care about your personal opinions when bullets start flying. Miller stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Understood. But this conversation stays between us. Agreed. As Zoe left his office, both of them understood that something fundamental had changed in their relationship. The game of cat and mouse was over, replaced by a mutual respect based on professional recognition rather than personal animosity. But the real test was still to come. Word of Zoe's incredible shot spread to the training facility like wildfire. By the next morning, instructors from other courses were asking to see the video footage, and candidates who had washed out were returning to witness what had become legendary in military training circles. The story grew with each telling. Some claimed the distance had been over 2,000 meters. Others said she had made the shot in 30-knot winds. A few insisted she had been blindfolded, but those who had been there knew the truth was impressive enough without embellishment. Miller's attitude towards Zoe underwent a dramatic transformation. Gone were the snide comments and unnecessary criticism. In their place was professional respect and acknowledgement of her capabilities. He began using her performance as an example for other candidates, highlighting the mental discipline and technical precision that had made her shot possible. Williams demonstrated something important yesterday. He told the group during a morning briefing. The difference between shooting and sniping isn't just about distance or difficulty. It's about mental preparation, technical knowledge, and the ability to perform under pressure. That shot required calculating factors that most of you haven't even considered yet. The other candidates looked at Zoe with new respect. Some approached her for advice on technique. Others simply wanted to understand how she had achieved something they had thought impossible. Rodriguez, who had been suspicious of her background from the beginning, finally got his answers. "You weren't just deployed," he said during a private conversation. "You were operational. That shot yesterday, that was combat experience showing through." Zoe nodded. 3 tours. Iraq and Syria. Overwatch missions. Precision engagement, target interdiction. How many confirmed? Enough. Rodriguez understood that some numbers weren't shared, even among professionals. And now you're here because the next generation needs to be better prepared than we were. Because the threats are evolving, and our training needs to evolve with them. Because someone has to make sure standards remain high while opportunities remain equal. The final weeks of the course proceeded smoothly. Zoe's presence had changed the dynamic, forcing Miller to examine his own biases and adjust his approach to instruction. Her performance continued to be exceptional, but she also began sharing knowledge with other candidates, helping them understand concepts that she had learned through experience rather than textbooks. When graduation day arrived, Zoe stood with 13 other candidates who had successfully completed the most challenging sniper course in the military. Miller presented each graduate with their certification, but when he reached Zoe, he paused. "Williams, you've taught me something important over the past 6 weeks. About assumptions, about standards, and about what real excellence looks like. Thank you." Zoe nodded. "Thank you for the opportunity to learn, Sergeant, and for remembering that we're all on the same team." But the ceremony was interrupted by the arrival of a black SUV carrying visitors that most of the graduates didn't recognize. 3 individuals in civilian clothes approached Miller and requested a private meeting with Zoe. Their credentials identified them as representatives from Joint Special Operations Command. Specialist Williams, the senior official, said once they were alone, "We've been following your progress through this course with great interest. Your performance has been noteworthy. Thank you, sir. We have a proposition for you. There are training programs beyond this level, programs that would make full use of your capabilities and experience. Interested?" Zoe looked back toward the graduation ceremony, where fellow candidates were celebrating their achievement. Then she looked at Miller, who was watching the conversation with obvious curiosity. "What kind of programs?" "The kind that officially don't exist. The kind that train people for missions that never happened. The kind that would appreciate someone with your particular combination of skills and discretion." It was the opportunity she had been preparing for throughout her military career. The chance to move from conventional forces to the shadowy world of special operations, where her abilities would be pushed to their absolute limits and her service would take on dimensions she could barely imagine. "I'm interested," she said. The official smiled. "We thought you might be. Report to Fort Bragg next Monday. Someone will be in touch with specific instructions." As the SUV drove away, Zoe rejoined the graduation ceremony. Miller approached her with obvious curiosity about her visitors, but she simply smiled and shook his hand. "Thank you again, Sergeant. This has been an educational experience." "Where are you heading next?" he asked. "Somewhere I can make a bigger difference." That evening, as the other graduates celebrated at the base club, Zoe packed her gear and prepared for the next phase of her journey. Her mission at the sniper course was complete. She had evaluated the program, identified areas for improvement, and demonstrated that excellence could come from unexpected sources. But more importantly, she had proven to herself and others that barriers existed to be broken, that assumptions were meant to be challenged, and that the deadliest weapon in any arsenal was an underestimated mind backed by uncompromising skill. As she drove away from the facility, Zoe thought about the shot that had changed everything. Not just for her, but for Miller, for the other candidates, and hopefully for future soldiers who would benefit from a program that judged capability over prejudice. The road ahead led to challenges she couldn't yet imagine, missions that would push her skills beyond anything she had experienced, and opportunities to serve at levels that few warriors ever achieved. But she was ready. She had always been ready. The only difference now was that everyone else knew it too.